There's a specific kind of anxiety spreading right now that's hard to name. It's not just worry about money or relationships or career, it's something underneath all of that. A sense that the ground itself has shifted and no one's quite sure what the new rules are. You followed the script, you did what you were told would work, and now the script isn't working anymore. Maybe it hit you when you looked at job listings and realized none of them felt like a real future. Or when you sat through another meeting about organizational values and felt the words were hollow and empty. Or when you tried to explain to someone what you believe and found yourself reaching for borrowed phrases that didn't actually mean anything to you. This isn't burnout. This isn't imposter syndrome. This is what it feels like when inherited certainties start to dissolve. And it's not just you. The institutions people once trusted are visibly struggling to maintain legitimacy. Not because of any single scandal, but because the narratives they offered about how the world works no longer map onto reality. Career paths that promise stability now feel arbitrary. Educational credentials that guaranteed purpose now lead to debt and jobs that didn't need the degree in the first place. Identities that provided belonging now feel more like performance obligations. The unrest you see in the world isn't separate from the unrest you feel inside. When shared meanings erode, anxiety doesn't stay internal, it leaks outward. Here's what makes this so difficult to navigate. Human beings are meaning-making creatures, but we're also cognitively lazy. We outsource meaning to systems whenever possible because it reduces the existential load of having to figure everything out for ourselves. Go to college, get a good job, work hard, retire comfortably. That's a script. And it's not true or false. It's a container that lets you not think about deeper questions while you get on with living. When these scripts break down, we don't automatically become more free, we become more anxious. Because freedom without framework feels like vertigo. What we're really living through isn't just social unrest, it's a collapse of inherited meaning. And that collapse forces a choice most people would rather avoid. So what do most people do when certainty evaporates? They regress. Some rush into rigid ideologies, anything that offers simple answers and clear enemies. The content almost doesn't matter. What matters is that it reduces complexity. Other people go tribal. They find a group, adopt its markers, enforce its boundaries, because belonging feels like protection, not because it represents their deepest values. Still others go numb. Distraction, consumption, endless scrolling, not necessarily out of pure hedonism, but exhaustion. When the world stops making sense, sometimes the only strategy that feels sustainable is to stop paying attention. And then there's nihilism, the intellectual version of giving up. It sounds like clarity, but it's just another way of avoiding the harder work. But here's what almost no one is saying. This kind of instability is historically rare. And it creates a specific kind of opening. When the external scaffolds of meaning collapse, something becomes possible. Individuation. Not the shallow version where you find yourself through products or aesthetics. Real individuation. The psychological process of becoming a person who is oriented by their own principles rather than borrowed ones. Now, this isn't comfortable. The reason most people avoid it is because it involves something most modern systems don't ask of you. Real choice. Not the illusion of choice, but the kind that defines who you actually are. The Renaissance didn't happen because Europe became stable. It happened because the old medieval order had visibly failed. The plague had killed a third of the population. The church's authority was fractured. Feudalism was beginning to crumble. And in that wreckage, something unexpected emerged. Individuals began to see themselves differently, not as minor characters in a cosmic drama scripted by God and King, but as agents capable of shaping their own reality. They didn't wait for new systems to save them. They built, they questioned, they took responsibility for their own thinking. That's what a renaissance actually is. Not necessarily optimism or hope, reconstruction under conditions of uncertainty. The mistake most people make in times like ours is waiting for clarity at the collective level before they take responsibility at the personal one. Once the political situation improves, once the economy stabilizes, once people come to their senses, this feels reasonable. It even feels responsible. But it's backwards. You cannot rebuild functional collective meaning without individuals who are capable of thinking for themselves. Societal renewal follows personal clarity, not the other way around. Waiting for new systems to emerge is just another form of outsourcing your agency. It's the same passivity that created the problem in the first place. The people who will shape what comes next aren't waiting for permission or certainty. They're doing the harder work now, clarifying what they actually stand for, independent of inherited scripts. So what does that work look like practically? It means asking yourself questions most systems won't want you to ask. What do I actually believe, separate from what I've been told to believe? What kind of person do I want to become, independent of external validation? What does excellence mean to me? And then, and this is the part that matters, actually building competence in alignment with those answers. Not performing identity, not signaling values and virtues, actually doing the work of becoming someone who is capable, trustworthy, and oriented to something real. This isn't grandiose. It's almost boring in how unglamorous it is, at least in the manifest sense. But it's the only response to uncertainty that doesn't amount to either abdication or escapism. Let's be clear. You didn't ask for this responsibility. You didn't choose to be born into an era where old certainties are dissolving. It would perhaps be easier if there were stable institutions to trust, clear paths to follow, shared narratives that actually meant something. But that's not the situation you're in. And pretending otherwise, wanting things to return to normal, hoping someone else will fix it, numbing yourself until the discomfort passes, well, that just extends the confusion. The alternative isn't heroism. It's something, at least manifestly speaking, that's more modest and more difficult. Accepting that meaning is something you construct, not something you receive. Building your life according to principles you've actually thought through. Taking responsibility for your own orientation in a world that won't do it for you. The scripts are breaking down. The old certainties aren't coming back. And somewhere in that wreckage is the space to become something you weren't allowed to be before. A person who thinks for themselves. A person who acts with integrity because they've decided what integrity means. A person who builds competence in service of something bigger than themselves. You don't need the world to stabilize for that to begin today. You just need to stop waiting.